Welcome back, everyone. The world stands at a crossroads. In the heated geopolitical environment of early 2026, tensions between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran have escalated with a speed and intensity not seen in years. On one side, the United States, backed by decades of military power projection, has deployed a powerful aircraft carrier strike group into Middle Eastern waters. On the other, Iran's leadership has issued an unmistakable warning. Any strike by the United States will be treated as an all-out war and met with a forceful response. This is not empty rhetoric. It is the language of crisis, brinkmanship, and a possible reshaping of global alliances and military engagements. Geo news at the center of this standoff is the deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln and its accompanying naval assets, a formidable symbol of American military capability. President Donald Trump, addressing the gravity of the situation, described this movement not merely as a shipping redeployment but as an armada set to reach the region, even as he expressed a preference not to use force. This duality of projecting strength while claiming restraint perfectly encapsulates the dilemma faced by military and political leaders in Washington: how to deter aggression without igniting a full-scale war. Reuters from Tehran: the reaction has been stark and unyielding. A senior Iranian official, speaking on condition of anonymity, declared that Iran would interpret any military attack, whether limited, unlimited, surgical, kinetic, whatever they call it, as an all-out war against Iran. This statement makes clear that Iran's definition of war does not rely on scale. Even a so-called surgical strike, designed to minimize broader conflict, would be met with a response that Tehran describes as severe and comprehensive. Geo news: this moment is defined by high alert, high tension, and the very real possibility that a spark could ignite a broader conflict. To understand the stakes, we must explore how this crisis developed, the military dimensions on both sides, the political narratives, and the global consequences that hang in the balance. For Iran, the buildup of U.S. military forces against its perceived interests has long been viewed as a direct challenge to its sovereignty and strategic autonomy. Tehran's leadership and military apparatus believe strongly in deterrence, the idea that showing readiness to retaliate strengthens the country's overall defense posture. This is why Iran's forces have been placed on high alert. It is why the Revolutionary Guard and other branches of the Iranian military have issued warnings about readiness to respond in the hardest way possible. Geo news: Iran's concern does not exist in a vacuum. It is shaped by decades of history involving shifting alliances, wars, sanctions, and espionage. The memories of past conflicts, such as the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, foreign intervention, and more recent proxy engagements with Israel and U.S. allies, all contribute to Tehran's world-view. This historical lens informs Iranian policymakers' belief that showing weakness invites further pressure or even attack. From the U.S. perspective, the military buildup is a message of deterrence, a way to demonstrate resolve to allies and adversaries alike. The aircraft carrier group's approach to the region is intended to reassure U.S. partners across the Middle East, including Gulf states and Israel, that Washington is prepared to defend its interests and uphold regional stability. In military strategy terms, aircraft carriers provide a flexible, mobile platform capable of projecting power without the need for host nation bases. They can launch aircraft, support reconnaissance missions, and serve as a command and control hub in crisis. Reuters: yet, though the United States publicly frames its actions in terms of deterrence and defense, Tehran perceives them as escalation. Iran's leaders have tied recent tensions to a range of issues, from human rights concerns and internal protests to U.S. warnings about Iran's nuclear activities. These links heighten the sense in Iran that foreign powers want to assert leverage or even coerce political change. When warnings escalate into war, like rhetoric from both capitals, the risk of misinterpretation and miscalculation grows exponentially. To outsiders, the situation can seem abstract, distant, and politically charged, but the reality on the ground has tangible effects. In recent days, international airlines began rerouting flights and canceling routes over the Middle East due to safety concerns. Major carriers, including European companies, have opted to avoid Iranian, Iraqi, and Gulf airspace altogether as tensions rise. This is not simply a matter of convenience. Airlines make such decisions based on aviation risk assessments and communications with governments, indicating how seriously the global system views the potential for conflict in the region. Reuters' many analysts are quick to point out that such disruptions are early signals of deeper instability. In modern geopolitics, movement of people and goods is intimately linked with political stability. When civil aviation is disrupted on a large scale, it affects global commerce, financial markets, and businesses that rely on uninterrupted supply chains. In Iran itself, internal dynamics play a powerful role in shaping foreign policy. For months, widespread protests have rocked the country, driven by economic hardships, political frustration, and sharp divisions within Iranian society. Reports from multiple observers, though often contested, suggest that thousands of protesters have been killed, with tens of thousands arrested. This severe social unrest adds fuel to Tehran's defensive posture, reinforcing the narrative that the regime is under internal threat and external pressure simultaneously. In such an environment, leaders may feel compelled to project strength to maintain cohesion and legitimacy. The Guardian, when internal unrest and external military threats converge, the result is a heightened risk of conflict escalation. This is not simply a contest of political rhetoric. It involves military assets, weapons systems, intelligence operations, and international alliances. Each side's actions are scrutinized for intent and frequently misread in the heat of crisis. Iran's declaration that any attack will be treated as war is also a strategic political statement. By setting a threshold where even limited strikes are considered war, Tehran raises the stakes for decision makers in Washington and allied capitals. This deterrent messaging tries to force restraint from opponents by signaling that any military engagement will bring extensive consequences. However, deterrence theory also carries a danger. If both sides believe the other is bluffing, they might push harder, leading to unintended escalation. A central question analysts ask is whether this crisis will remain contained to words and positioning, or whether it will progress into military hostilities. Historically, conflicts between major powers or regional powers have often begun with signaling, naval movements, air patrols, political speeches before spiraling into kinetic engagements. In part, this is because military mobilization becomes its own driver of escalation. Once forces are in place and troops are on alert, political pressure to justify the deployment rises. Leaders fear appearing weak if they pull back, even at great risk. At the same time, global diplomatic pressure and fear of a wider conflagration provide counterweights to escalation. World leaders, international organizations, and foreign ministries around the world have repeatedly called for restraint and dialogue in the face of growing tensions. Many fear the last thing the world needs is another regional war with global economic and security implications. Indeed, the shadow of past conflicts in the Middle East, from the Gulf War to the Iraq invasion, from Syria's civil war to clashes between Israel and Iran-aligned groups, looms large in strategic thinking. Beyond the immediate military danger, there is also the question of nuclear proliferation and regional security. Iran's nuclear program has long been a central point of contention. While Tehran insists it is for peaceful purposes, many Western powers remain skeptical. U.S. leaders have tied the military buildup and warnings to concerns over Iran's nuclear capabilities and the need to prevent further escalation of nuclear development. Nuclear negotiations that once offered a path to de-escalation have stalled in recent years, leaving a vacuum where military posturing grows louder than diplomatic discourse. AL Monitor, another factor complicating the crisis, is the role of regional allies. Nations such as Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others have a vested interest in how the U.S. Iran standoff unfolds. Israel, in particular, has its own history of conflict with Iran, including reports of past airstrikes on Iranian nuclear and military sites in 2024, actions that drew international attention and criticism from Tehran. These historical hostilities make Israel's stake in the current standoff especially acute. Tehran's warnings are not only directed at the United States, but also resonate with regional adversaries. Worried about Iran's intentions, Wikipedia, as the crisis unfolds, analysts are closely watching international diplomatic efforts. Nations that may not take sides militarily still have an interest in preventing conflict, both for humanitarian reasons and for global stability. An outbreak of war in the Middle East would not stay contained within regional borders. It would disrupt energy markets, global trade, and economic confidence worldwide. Yet, despite these global stakes, political leaders on both sides remain locked in rhetoric that suggests limited room for compromise. Iran's insistence that any attack equals war raises the bar for U.S. actions and complicates calculations Washington might otherwise make. The U.S. military presence, seeing an armada, as President Trump described, is meant to deter. But deterrence only works when both sides understand and share a mutual interest in avoiding conflict. In this case, mutual understanding may be in short supply. One of the central dangers now is miscalculation. History is dotted with examples where major conflicts began not by deliberate strategic choice, but by mistakes, miscommunication, or localized incidents that spiraled out of control. In an environment where naval assets are at sea, jets are flying near contested airspace, and radar and surveillance systems are active, even a minor incident, a misunderstanding, an accidental strike, a misidentified radar blip, could be enough to spark a chain reaction. As of this moment, no confirmed major kinetic conflict between the United States and Iran has occurred. However, the world watches closely as these forces continue to mobilize, and as the rhetoric from Tehran and Washington grows only more uncompromising. Civil aviation disruptions, military deployments, and political warnings all point to a situation that could worsen rapidly if diplomatic channels fail to produce reassurances on either side. Looking ahead, the next phase of this crisis will hinge on how leaders prioritize strategic restraint versus decisive action. If diplomacy, either direct or via intermediaries, can reduce tensions, the danger of war might dim. But if threshold lines like Iran's all-out war stance or U.S. military posturing harden further, we could be on the brink of a confrontation that reshapes the Middle East and challenges global peace. In summary, the current standoff, sparked by the arrival of a U.S. aircraft carrier strike group and Iran's declaration that any strike means war represents one of the most perilous points in recent history for U.S.-Iran relations. With military deployments, political rhetoric, and global implications all converging, the risk of escalation remains high. Whether through diplomacy, strategic patience, or unforeseen developments, the world will watch closely to see how this chapter unfolds.